Good morning and welcome to This Week. Energy crisis. Prices keep rising.
I got a big truck. I got a 2500 GNC, and it's costing me $100 a week.
The politicians keep talking.
Democrats on Capitol Hill have rejected virtually every proposal.
President Bush and Dick Cheney have turned the GOP into the gas and oil party.
What's causing the crisis? How much worse can it get? And what must be done to bring costs down, protect our environment, and preserve our security? An in-depth discussion this morning with four of the country's leading experts and advocates. Jeffrey Sachs of Columbia University, Texas Senator Kay Bailey Hutchison, Congressman Ed Markey of Massachusetts, and Red Kavanaugh of the American Petroleum Institute. Then,
he has completely reversed himself.
He was all over the map on public finance. Well, I refuse to be lectured on national security.
He doesn't have an understanding of the nature of the threat.
McCain and Obama go at it on keeping promises and protecting our country. That and the rest of the week's politics on our roundtable with Cokie Roberts, Sam Donaldson, Matt Dowd, and Donna Brazil. And, as always, the Sunday Funnies.
Have you noticed how a lot of gas stations now have TV screens where they show the news or clips of the news? You know, let me tell you something, okay? If I'm paying $5 a gallon, I want HBO, Showtime, okay?
From the heart of the nation's capital, This Week, with ABC News Chief Washington Correspondent George Stephanopoulos, live from the Newseum on Pennsylvania Avenue.
One of our guests this morning has written that the similarities between today and the early 1970s are eerie. We may not have the long gas lines of 1973, but record high oil and gas prices are driving consumers crazy. They're cascading across the economy and just crushing America's airlines and auto companies. Overseas, the steep cost of fuel and food is sparking strikes, even riots, and posing long-term threats to our national security. All this has put energy independence at the top of Washington's agenda. Congress, President Bush, and the two men who want to succeed him all weighed in this week. And in Saudi Arabia today, an emergency summit with officials from 36 countries joining oil executives to examine the causes of the energy crisis and what to do about it. We've gathered our own mini-summit here. I am joined by Jeffrey Sachs, director of Columbia University's Earth Institute, also the author of Commonwealth, Economics for a Troubled Planet. Congressman Ed Markey, you're the chairman of the House Select Committee on Energy Independence. Senator Kay Bailey Hutchison, the chairman of the Senate Republican Policy Committee, and Red Kavanaugh, the president of the American Petroleum Institute. And let's play off this summit this morning in Saudi Arabia. The Saudis have announced that they're going to increase production by 200,000 barrels a day, say they may even do more. But Congressman Markey, King Abdullah also took off after speculators. Is this increase in production going to be enough to bring prices down?
It may have a marginal impact. There is, without question in my mind, speculation going on, manipulation going on. The Democrats are going to put bills on the House floor this week to deal with that issue. But in the end, this crisis is really caused by 12 years of Republican control of Congress. We've gone from 46% dependence when the Republicans took over the House and Senate in 1995 to 61% dependence upon imported oil today. We've had an oil and gas agenda. They've thwarted the renewable energy agenda. They're still blocking in the Senate the tax breaks for renewable wind and solar and geothermal and other renewable energy technologies. We only have 2% of the oil reserves in the United States. The OPEC has 67%. That's our weakness. Our strength is that we are technological giants. We have not yet unleashed it. The Republican White House and House and Senate are still blocking that revolution.
Let me bring Senator Hutchison in here. You saw Congressman Markey say this is caused by Republican control of the Congress and Republican White House.
Well, of course, I would say that the Democrats have thwarted every effort we have made to increase our supply. This is a supply and demand issue. The demand has skyrocketed mostly because of global increases, and we have not done anything about supply because we're thwarted in nuclear power. We're thwarted in using our own natural resources. Drilling offshore on a state-by-state option is something that I think we could do very environmentally safely, and yet anything that says production is killed by the Democrats. What I think we ought to do to get the speculators to stop thinking that the prices are going to go up is for Congress to show that we are going to take action with a balanced plan, with renewables, with nuclear power, with expanded refineries, with drilling and exploration of our own natural resources. If we did that, yes, it would take 5 to 10 years to get those things in line, but the speculators would be out of the market.
I want to get to the solutions in a minute, but let me talk a little bit more about the causes, Red, because you've said that we need to have more energy literacy here in the United States. I've heard everybody talk about speculators this morning, and I've looked at a lot of studies that show that this is a marginal impact, the problem of speculation, and it really is fundamentally a problem of supply and demand.
It is fundamentally, because unless you had very tight supply and demand, you wouldn't create the platform that would allow people to think that there was an opportunity here to make an investment, and then that could lead to other kinds of things. So you must address the base global supply and demand situation in order to bring some sort of order. Like right now, we've had civil disruptions in Nigeria. 1 million barrels are offline that are not available.
So that more than makes up for the Saudi Arabian increase in production.
More than makes up, exactly. And it's the light, sweet stuff that we use to make gasoline, and that's what's so important here in the United States. So we have to all work together on this thing, because it's not as simple as people would have you believe.
And we also have the issue of demand, Jeffrey. I guess in the United States here, each of us consumes about 25 barrels of oil a year. This problem is going to get much worse. China, hugely growing economy, only 2 barrels a person a year. India, less than 1.
I think the most basic fact is the world economy has been growing, especially in Asia. Demand for oil is increasing. Supply has not been increasing. That's true also of food. It's true of metals. It's true of a number of commodities. There is a basic imbalance. But when Senator Hutchison talks about a balanced plan, we've had no plan at all in this country for years. We've just wasted the last 8 years. That's the real tragedy.
I was quoting you at the very top of the show when you said that the similarities between here and the 1970s are eerie. So if you look at that, it took us about 15 years to grow out of the energy crisis in the 1970s. What lessons do you draw from that, and what would you do now based on those lessons?
We have to move fast on a number of fronts. We need conservation. We need long mileage automobiles, which was delayed forever. We do need alternative energy sources, renewables. We need the nuclear. That's got to be part of the mix. We are going to have to work together internationally. We duck that issue entirely. Climate change is also part of the equation. This administration hid that from view for 8 years. And so we never had a balanced plan. We never had a strategy at all. It was oil from the first day. That's been the big mistake.
I don't disagree with much of what he said. We need a balanced plan. This is a time when we could come together in a bipartisan way. We are not going to pass a bill that is just oil speculation. That will do nothing. But if we could combine that with the other things that we've all talked about, we support solar and wind. We're looking at wave and current energy, using our oceans and the Gulf of Mexico for that. We're doing experiments there now, research. There is so much, but all of it's going to take time. If we show that we are going to have a goal of 2025 energy independence for America that will protect our national security and our economic security, and we can do it together.
How about
90% of this is all in agreement.
I do want to address a lot of the long-term issues. How about in the short term? We've seen this increase out of Saudi Arabia. We've seen others have said that perhaps it's time to tap the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. It's been done in the past. It's been done in the 1990s. It did bring gas prices down. Why not do that now? Why not take 500 million barrels out of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve to try to drive these prices down now?
Well, first let me give the president credit. He did not want to stop the next generation of putting into the SPRO. We were into a 6-month plan. They had already gone out for the bids to put money in the SPRO. And when Congress said with a united bipartisan voice, no, don't put more in right now, he immediately stepped back, and we're not going to. It's frozen until the end of the year. Give him credit. Now, going forward, if we had a plan, I think looking at taking some out on a measured basis as part of an overall plan that would increase supply, I think he would look at that as well. But we have about a 4-month supply now for emergencies. We've just seen what's happened in the Midwest. We know we're going to have emergencies. After Katrina, we did take money out of the SPRO, oil out of the SPRO. And so we should look at that if there is an overall plan. It would have a marginal effect. So would speculators being taken out of the market. Every bit helps.
It's kind of a sad day in American history. We were given 1 week's notice to go over to Saudi Arabia today to beg the Saudi Arabians and OPEC to please produce more oil we can purchase. We have 700 million barrels of oil in our strategic petroleum reserve. The president should say to OPEC that he is going to begin deploying 100,000 barrels of oil per day out of that strategic petroleum reserve to drive down the price. And he should also say to them, like President Kennedy said to Khrushchev in 1961, that we are going to put a man on the moon. We are not going to allow the communists to control the skies. He should announce today a crash program, that we are going to have automobiles that are dramatically more efficient, that we're going to have wind and solar and geothermal, that we are going to use our technology in order to break our dependence upon Saudi Arabia and the rest of these countries. But that is not happening. Instead, we're over there with a tin cup begging them to sell more of our weakness to us, imported oil.
Could the petroleum industry sign on to that?
Look, our concern is that what you need are permanent solutions. That's the signal the market's looking for. Opening up, providing some access, doing everything. We support all the alternatives. Our companies are some of the largest players in that. Any scenario you look at, you will find that you need all the energy we can get of every kind. And to take some off or to marginalize others is going to end up hurting the consumer. The consumer, when we went past $3 a gallon gasoline up to $4, they connected the dots. And that's why you're now seeing them asking for urgent action on the part of the Congress. They understand that we need more energy.
It's so much. Go ahead.
It's so interesting how there's a rough consensus on the things that need to go into this, but there's been nothing that's been done during this whole administration, because they basically just turned away from realities, turned away from the alternatives, turned away from massive investments that are needed in the science and technology. They turned away from really investing in the long mileage automobiles, millions of dollars, rather than the billions that are needed to get these alternatives
you say
going.
Consensus, and you blame the administration, yet on the other hand, Republicans and the president say, no, Democrats have been fighting the issue of supply. They haven't been willing to drill in Anwar. They haven't been willing to drill offshore.
Those really are small pieces of the puzzle when you look at the arithmetic. Everybody agrees we need alternatives, alternative energy sources, major sources. We need major conservation. That's all new technology that needs to be developed. And we need to take into account climate change, which is now agreed by everybody but was ducked by this administration all along. So we've not done the alternatives, we've not done the conservation, we've not invested seriously in the climate change. We've never put together a coherent, balanced package. And that's a huge mistake for this country, because it would not be hard to find that kind of middle ground.
Well, first of all, we have made major investments in renewables and research. We have increased huge amounts. However, let me just say, look at the last month, just as an example. Republicans have put forward a balanced plan. The Democrats came forward with a plan that had no energy reduction at all. It was sue OPEC. Congressman Markey has just said, oh, we've gone over there with a tin cup. Well, at the same time, the Democrats are passing in the United States Senate a bill that would sue them. Now, what kind of reaction are we going to expect from Saudi Arabia, which is today looking at trying to help the world market, if we are going to sue them? That's not a way to try to make friends and increase our supply. And in addition, the Democratic plan had two other things: a windfall profits tax, which has been shown not to work, and form a commission to investigate price gouging, which is being done by the CPSC right now. So I do think we could come together, but not if the Democrats refuse to have any increase in supply And the Republicans are willing to certainly do more in research, more in renewables, more in conservation, and I think you have a point. We haven't done enough in conservation, but make those investments.
Let me bring Congressman Mark here on two of the points that Senator Hutchison raised. First of all, this issue of suing OPEC. Secondly, on the windfall profits tax, it is true from my studying that you look back what happened in 1980, the windfall profits tax did not bring in the revenues that were promised. It did lead to lower domestic production and higher imports.
And higher imports.
No
and jobs went overseas.
Senator Hutchison could not be more wrong about the Democratic plan. We, in fact, are saying in legislation we're bringing to the House floor this week that the American people have already given the oil and gas industry access to 80% of all of our natural resources on public lands, but they are not drilling there. Last year, ExxonMobil made $40 billion. It took $32 billion of that and just poured it back into purchasing back its own stock. They should have been investing in drilling on the public lands in the United States that they already have access to. So our use it or lose it plan is now going to say to the oil and gas industry, we've given you access to all of this oil and gas. Start drilling or we're going to start putting a fee on you. Secondly, on wind, on solar, on the renewable energy, that they don't really consider to be energy. They don't consider renewable energy to be new energy.
That's
well,
ridiculous.
in the Senate, it lost by one vote last December that we would have production tax credits for wind and solar, that we would have a national renewable electricity standard for wind and solar and other renewables. It lost by one vote. Whose vote was that? John McCain's vote. John McCain was the one vote short. So you cannot say that there is no energy production strategy by the Democrats.
You raised a lot of different points there. I want to bring Red in here. On specifically on that point on the drilling, there is an awful lot of undeveloped land out there that has already been leased but is not being drilled on.
That's a misunderstanding. People are absolutely mischaracterizing the whole process. Right now, for example, this is called exploration. We lease. We pay the government to get land. There's no guarantee there's oil and gas on there. There's no MapQuest chart that says drill right here for 50 million barrels. Most of that land doesn't have oil and gas. Let me give you an example. Over half the leases in the Gulf of Mexico are out in the deep water. We have drilled 296 wells in the deep water. Only 21% ended up having any commercial available. It's $1 million each to run these big holes down there. So
and
the
George,
point
that's
is,
why this is a distraction, because this is 10 or 12 years off at a minimum. It's a
it
small
is
amount.
not a distraction.
A small amount compared to the world balance. But when it comes to something serious, look at the president's 2007 budget: $31 million in research for advanced batteries for the hybrids and plug-in hybrids. 31 million when we spend billions every day on oil.
In the
this is what's
Republican
wrong.
plan,
This
we're
is
going
exactly
to have
what's wrong.
$100 million a year in
100
those battery and increased
Well, it's better than
capabilities
31 million.
for cars.
we spend our own money, the government and investors' money, not the government money to go and explore. The government doesn't spend any money there. And oh, by the way,
My
speaking of
point is
hybrids, it was our industry that developed the film that makes possible the next generation of
Terrific.
hybrids.
My point is that if we're going to get serious about this, we have to do the arithmetic. And the president got us distracted in a useless debate about this, about the offshore continental shelf. This is a tiny part of the puzzle.
But even if it's a tiny part, are there grounds for a grand compromise here, where
Yes.
Democrats agree to, okay, fine, we don't love it, but let's drill on the Outer Continental Shelf. Let's drill on Anwar in return for these investments that you're talking about in alternatives.
We don't have to have a grand compromise that allows the
that.
oil industry to drill off of our beaches on the East Coast and the West Coast, to drill where the polar bear is swimming, until, and experts say this is the case, they drill on the 80% of the oil that we already have that is available to them. They should clean their plate first before they ask for dessert. They're not going there. ExxonMobil, $40 billion in profits, $32 billion just to buy back their own stock. They only spent $10 million on renewables last year and blocked the tax breaks that we want to give to the wind and the solar industry. That formula is a recipe for dependence upon oil to the indefinite future.
Every single available drilling rig, drill ship is in use, being used right now. You can't go and drill when you don't have equipment. We are not magicians as an industry. And the idea that there's oil and gas under this 80% is just, it's not true.
Can I
the
say
data
this,
doesn't support it.
Judge? They're sure that there's oil off our beaches and in the Arctic where the polar bear is swimming. But in the 80% that they've already bid on, the leases they already control, they're not sure the oil is there. And so it's just a disingenuous argument that they're making in order to finish off their agenda of getting access to every bit of oil, even in the pristine wilderness areas.
I think there is a compromise here. And I think it means we have to look for more production and more use of our own natural resources. The Democrats have stopped investing in nuclear power plants. We haven't had one for the last 25 years. We have now put in place the regulatory process to allow more, and companies are beginning to invest. It does take time to get them up, but we should have nuclear power in abundance. It is a huge, efficient, and technological and environmentally
Jeff
safe
Sachs
way to go.
Said he was for that. Are you
this.
open to that, to at least exploring more nuclear energy now, building more nuclear power plants?
Yeah, look, nuclear power is on the table. No one can take it off the table. The problem is that it is dead lying on the table. What the Republicans,
what does that mean?
No,
well, what it
not
means is that
dead.
Wall Street has not invested in a new nuclear power plant in 34 years. We use capitalism in our country.
Because the regulatory requirements made it impossible to do.
That is
I think
absolutely.
in this
That
case, it's a matter of whether there's public acceptance, and if the public understands the technology, the safety, and the needs, I think it can come back into more public acceptance, and I think that's important. It is a part of the puzzle. So is conservation. So is agreeing on climate change.
Yes.
And we need to get all of those things and investing in the basic science and technology to make those pieces work. We've never had that. 8 years we've lost. We've wasted
The Republicans want to use federal taxpayer money in order to revive a dead industry, to put a defibrillator on it. And they might be able to have it sit up, but while they're blocking, while they are blocking the tax breaks for wind and solar and renewables. So the waste issue, the non-proliferation issue, but ultimately the public acceptance issue still sits there. If Wall Street wanted it, there's a streamlined nuclear licensing process. They have not
We're
been
just
able
about
to
out of
do
time.
it.
You get the last word.
It's not Wall Street, it is Main Street that has to invest in nuclear power plants. And when we have a regulatory process that allows it to be done not with smaller regulations, but doing it in a shorter time frame, they will make that investment. And you have to encourage people to make a good business decision and to know that they're going to be up and running in about 5 years instead of 12 years. That's what we are now in the process of doing. But we have been thwarted from doing that for the last 25 years by the Democrats insisting on allowing a lawsuit after every time has run on all the different regulatory necessities.
Democrats, Republicans, and the public never learned the lessons from the 1970s and carried them forward. The problem we have with energy today has its roots back decades, and everyone has to blame, so we all need to get together and start working on it. It's not too late.
And we are
That's correct. That is correct.
Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid want a new agenda, but they need a President Obama to put it in
There is
place.
clearly a lot more to talk about here. This is not the last time we were going to revisit this subject.
Just
Thank
note
you very
that
much.
Republicans are trying to make a compromise, and Democrats keep thwarting it.
Nobody's going to get the last word today. I'm going to take the last word. Thank you all very much. The roundtable's next.